morning, afternoon, evening, night, whatever time of day you're listening to this. I'm Chad,
And I'm Paul.
and we are As Yet Unnamed Roleplay Game Podcast. This is episode 2. Thank you
Woo!
for... Yeah, we came all the way to episode 2. We made it, and you may notice there is shiny, new, amazing artwork as promised, which Paul hasn't seen yet, sadly, for him.
It's the only reason I'm here.
Yeah. It's because obviously we're not allowed to meet up together if we were humans and not non-binary computer programs.
Boo.
Yeah,
Boo his coronavirus.
yeah, woo, all of that stuff. Anyway, we're still going to try to get a second episode out between us. So sorry if we talk over each other, but we can't see one another because I don't have a webcam and Paul's a non-binary computer program. I mean, doesn't have a webcam.
Yeah,
Yeah,
webcam.
I think they bought it. It's fine. So yeah, this episode. Last time it was a bit of a general spree of talking about, well, role playing in general.
Yeah, a bit of introduction of us and how non-binary computer programs we are. I mean, people.
I've got written down here, white male potato men.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds about right.
That's what
That sounds like us.
Yeah, white male potato men.
As you can see from the as yet unnamed images and videos.
Well, they have names. They're all just called like Work in Progress 1 and Work in Progress 2, and they'll never be completed. But this one is truly a triumph. Anyway, so let's talk a little bit about what we've done since the last episode, which was released on earlier this week, Monday.
On earlier this week, I like it.
Yeah.
Very, very specific.
Precise. I could check. I've got the internet in my hands. I believe it was Monday.
I have the whole internet in my hands.
And we're recording on, well, they're big hands because I'm a non-binary computer program. So, yeah, I believe it was Monday. We're recording on Thursday. But we have done a lot since the recording of that first episode.
We have.
We have.
I think. Hang on. Did we finish your campaign, the D&D one?
We did. We finished. God, wow. We need to get better at this.
Yeah, we do.
We finished the Relics of Vorna. I think we'd finished it before, hadn't we?
I
No.
cannot recall.
I
don't think we
did not. It was Tuesday. Tuesday we released the last podcast. Tuesday, 7th of April.
I think at this point in time, the fact that we can't even work out when we last recorded and had our D&D session.
It was before the quarantine.
I suppose a day is not really that much of an issue.
No, you're right, yeah. But it was before the quarantine because you were over at the flat.
Yes.
So we must have finished Relics of Vorna. We've definitely started Death Watch.
Yeah, we started Death Watch.
Because
we were discussing it, weren't we? So yeah, we must have done.
Yeah, or whatever. People can work it out. We'll have a tighter timeline in the future.
Yeah, we'll write this stuff down on the interwebs.
No promises.
No. Hashtag no promises.
Hashtag no promises. Our motto. So since then,
the title of your sex tape. I mean,
pardon.
Hashtag no promises is the title of your sex tape.
Oh dear. No comment.
I'm on form today. Moving on. Right, so
yeah, we played a bit of Magic before the quarantine. Then the quarantine hit.
Yeah.
I moved. I've mainly been playing League of Legends and doing a bit of Xbox stuff and learning how to create content.
I have been catching up on Assassin's Creed.
Oh.
Having played Assassin's Creed 3, I believe it was. Having not finished the game, I thought I would restart it and got further than I did last time. I'm enjoying it, but the storyline isn't as enthralling, so I won't bore you with the deets.
Fair enough. Well, I hear you've also been doing a bit of painting as well.
Yes. In amongst work, because I'm one of those people who still is working.
Keyword. Brave man.
Yeah. Woo. But yeah, in the downtime, free time, etc., I've been catching up on some painting.
Have
And
you?
hopefully, the next time we have a game of Death Watch, we might even have some painted models. Hashtag no
Yeah,
promises.
I was I was literally about to ask that. So yeah, Paul, as a very generous GM, has well, not donated, but provided. That's the word I'm looking for. All of the models for Death Watch. Well, having said that, I think I did that for Relics of Orna, except for you.
Yeah, I had my dwarf, which was actually for another D&D campaign
Fantastic
where I
multi-part.
was a dwarf.
That's right. I've got my human fighter model forever somewhere. Um, yeah, here it is.
I have a human fighter as
It
well.
just means that all my human fighters have to be Trident and Shield fighters. So um, life goes on. Trident is the best weapon in D&D. Um,
So I've heard.
yeah, I will provide a substantial argument for that later in this episode, maybe. Um, yeah, so you've probably done more hobbying than I have. I've been playing Divinity Original Sin 2 with my brothers, which is,
Okay.
yeah, it's a role play computer game. Very good fun. I wanted to talk to you about it actually, so now's as good a time as any. Um, it's really good fun. It's reminiscent of Diablo 2 in that like your skill building and stuff is very freeform and inventive, but you're able to respec at any time for like 98% of your stuff. So it's if you decide that you've wasted points in certain skills and stuff, you can like respec and make it more useful. Um,
Okay.
it's really enjoyable. I would recommend it. I'd happily start again. I think Chris is slightly interested, but he needs a computer first. Really
Yes.
important. But yeah, you can have up to four
Yeah.
people working together in a party.
Okay. That sounds good.
Yeah, it's good fun. It's got
Well, I've been playing a little bit of Diablo 3 as well.
nice, nice. Yeah. So what I found the Diablo series lacked was actual role playing. Like it's a very mechanical based game, and things like well Divinity, but Baldur's Gate and the other like Baldur's Gate type
RPG based one.
games, yeah, like that
London
have
Siege.
yeah, they actually have like role play elements where you have to make decisions that impact the world, and I really enjoy that. So
Hmm.
it's got all the best bits of Diablo 2. It's got better graphics, you'll be glad to hear, and yeah, it's got some really nice role playing elements. So we're slowly getting through that. Although currently I just set everything on fire, which the party has had enough of. So we're having a little bit of party friction where they're telling me to respec, but one of
Not
the
the
things you
fans.
can't respec is you can't buy new spells for free. So I can happily put all my points into other schools of magic, but I don't know any magic spells from those schools. Um, just wizard things.
Slight problems.
Yeah, doesn't matter though. I'll get over it. So that's our hobbying and stuff that we wrote down and scripted fully talked about. Let's jump into the meat of today's episode, which is Dungeons and Dragons.
Haha.
Yes, the mother that is. We are pretty specifically. I should have mentioned this when we did that little brief before we started. Our planning session of all of about 3 minutes, which was mostly me trying to figure out the recording software.
And also creating this episode's
Oh yeah,
video to go in the back.
yeah. You wouldn't have guessed that I managed to conjure this up in under 60 seconds, would you? It probably was more like under 100 seconds, but I'll allow myself some leeway for this brilliant art. Yeah, we're going to pretty much be just talking about D&D 5th edition, because while the other ones are still there, you can play them. 5th is the current one, and I would argue that
It's what everyone's playing.
yeah, and I would argue it's the best version of D&D to date. So that's why we're sticking to it, I think.
Good enough reason as any.
Yeah. So, I mean, why do we think it's good? Let's start there. What are your top pitches to people who want to start playing a roleplay game about D&D?
Yeah. There's quite a lot of things to choose from, really. I find 5th edition a lot easier to get your head around. It's a lot simpler than some of the previous editions.
Yeah, it's not as densely layered with complex rules.
Yeah. So sorry about that. That was my quarantine communication device vibrating itself off the table.
Okay. I hope it's okay.
Moving on.
And I just want to say, quarantine vibration device doesn't sound particularly non-sexual RPG.
No, not at all. That's why it's a quarantine communication device.
Oh, whoops! I must have had a malfunction in my
Non-binary.
non-binary communication matrix. Carry on. Let's go back to D&D. I can embarrass myself more later.
Let's edit that a little bit later. So what was the question again? Sorry.
Why do you like it? What's good?
What's good? The interaction levels are, I think, about right. There's the element of combat and the skills that you can get for the role-playing elements. I think is quite a good meld. What do you think?
Well, you mentioned the skills there, which is a really good thing to mention, because they used to be about 3, maybe 4 times as many, and some of them were just a bit random. As you know, because I keep asking you to take like swim checks, and you look at your skills list and you're like, swimming's not a skill, Chad. I'm like, fudge. Yeah, so they've simplified that skill list and made it more generic, which is good and easier for players to get their head round, so they know if they want to do something athletic in any variety, they'll have to take an athletics check. So if they're good at it, they'll be like, I'm up for that. If they're bad at it, they'll be like, maybe not. So I like that.
Still do it anyway.
Well, a lot of them still do it anyway, yeah, there's that. Because you can always roll a 20, there's a 5% chance.
Yeah.
The class system has been... I'm going to use a dangerous word here with regard to roleplay games. The class system has been balanced quite considerably, while retaining a lot of the thematic differences. So one of the things I didn't like in D&D 4.0 was that everything was more or less the same. Like, and when I say more or less, that's not a great phrase, was considerably similar. Like, most spells did a number of D8 worth of damage, and most weapons did a number of D8 worth of damage. There wasn't that much variance, and so mechanically it just felt like you were playing the same character with different skins. But not in 5.
Woo, 5!
Yeah, D&D 5.0 is... all the classes function very different. I mean, I don't have much experience with D&D 4.0, in fairness, so it might be that I missed out on a lot of the stuff there, but having played like levels 1 to 3, I didn't feel like there was too much scope for increase. But yeah, the D&D 5.5 goes back to like the 3 and 3.5 sort of feel.
Which is a lot of... Yeah, I played a lot more of that than 4th.
Yeah.
I think 3.5 was probably one of the ones that I've played the most of.
Yeah, and there's still a little bit of enjoyable complexity, not complication, but complexity in building your class and finding out, like, do I want to do this archetype rather than that? And that's another thing I like. They've added the archetypes, which rather than you having to like multi-class or go into this weird class that's third-party made, they've just kind of included a lot of them, especially with the expansion book, Xanthar's Guide to Everything.
Yeah.
So you've got a lot of options there that do a lot of different cool things, but it all feels more or less on the same power level.
Yeah.
Except, frankly, rangers with bows. I'm sick of them. What do you do? Oh, I rolled a 2 to hit. What does that mean? Oh, I got a total of 17. Pardon, what? Yeah.
Come again?
Yeah, they do. They get 2 attacks at level 5. Yeah. So apart from like, they are very efficient at doing damage if you build them in a particular manner. But
yes.
Yeah, I mean, c'est la vie. It's not perfect, but it is good, and it means that everybody can feel like they're doing their thing.
yeah, it gives a lot more scope for individuality, um, compared to well, from what you're saying, fourth. Like I said, I haven't really played much of fourth, so I wouldn't necessarily know. But having
Nice.
played fifth quite a lot of times, especially in your campaign, um, it does come across that, as you said, balanced. There's that chance to progress your own character, and it's not generic,
Yeah.
which makes it a lot more enjoyable and a lot more open to the role playing element rather than just combat.
Yeah, which has been a failing of D&D. Not a failing, but a part that it's really relied on the GM to cover, whereas there's
Mm,
a lot more. When let's talk about character creation a bit, because there's a lot more guidance on that from a role playing side. There's like the huge, I say huge, it's only like 4 pages worth in the book, um, but
mm,
like this massive resource of tables where you can look through the different backgrounds and personality types and choose one, or you can just roll for it randomly, and that gives you, even if you're a newer role player, it gives you like a vague set of cliff notes for your character, so you can be like, oh, what would my character do in this circumstance, and then you can look at like your
yeah,
background and your personality and be like, oh, I'm a loner who doesn't like people, so I'm just going to back away from the crowd and not help the injured person.
which does kind of not necessarily go against the whole ethos of the role playing element, but it does. If you're
Well,
not going to interact with the rest of the rest of the
well,
party,
sorry, I meant like the wounded NPC that you found.
yeah,
Pardon me.
yeah,
But it really
yeah.
helps people who are newer to roleplay games, because I've spoken to a couple of people who said, "Oh, I don't really mind like the dice rolling and that stuff because that's just like a board game," but I don't know about the acting part. They mean the roleplay,
Mm,
but the acting part, um, and it really helps. Like, so Kara was quite new at it, wasn't she? She'd done a little bit before,
yes,
but she did some rolling on there, and she just went with whatever she got,
yeah.
and she maintained it throughout the campaign. So it allowed her to keep that consistency, to grow into like a comfort level with that character. And I think this is a
Mm,
really important inclusion in the rules, just so that people have a basis for how they want to play their character.
mm. No, I agree. To be fair, on your one, I did the same. I fancied a bit of a change, and I didn't really know what to do, so I used that for my character creation. Um, he was a bit of a zealot, um, to be fair, and
I,
it was quite amusing to role play that character. But it does give you that whole mindset of how your character should act in certain circumstances,
mm,
and I think it um, it it does give you that what's the word I'm looking for? It sort of gives you another way of seeing the world rather than how you'd act. So if you have your generic RPG character that you always play, it just gives you a bit more versatility
yeah, I think trying new
as
things.
a player.
Yeah, and I think trying new things is really important in RPGs. I did it when I started playing a fighter because I previously thought fighters were boring. Um, and they sort of are in combat, weirdly, but that's because like I was playing a fighter mage, so I didn't use any spells, so I shot myself in the foot. But out of combat, I really enjoyed like the role playing opportunity of being someone who was just very direct and got things done, than trying to be clever about things.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
So going moving on to character creation, what's your go-to character, would you say?
Um, Go to character. Sorcerer with Wisdom 8.
A sorcerer with wisdom, specifically wisdom 8.
Specifically Wisdom 8. And I'm happy to explain that. Everybody needs a dump stat. And
Yeah.
even when we're not like doing point buys or whatever, where you can fiddle around with your stats and things, which are fine. I don't think that's a bad way of doing it. Um, but I like the idea that characters have negative traits because that defines them more, like defines their character more. than what they can do. Um,
Mm.
and so Wisdom 8 is a really interesting stat, which makes you bad at perception, bad at a lot of quite important but soft skills. Um, like, I believe medicine is wisdom based. Uh, Perception, as I mentioned, a couple of others that are quite key. But role playing wise, a low wisdom is not necessarily knowing when something is a bad idea. So it allows me to play a character who can make mistakes that I know are mistakes. And I initially started doing it so that I was like I've got a low wisdom. If it sounds like a good idea, I'm probably going to be quite easy to persuade into doing it, and that's fine, right? That's okay. Let's go and make mistakes. Because initially I didn't like doing that. I was very much a bit of a perfectionist in getting everything done as well as could be done.
Yeah.
I've discovered there's a lot of fun to be had in failure. So yeah, sorcerer with wisdom 8, so I can make mistakes, have a little bit of fun, be a little bit silly. I can come up with some smart ideas, and then not have to double check them. Because in real life, like if I suggested something, I'd then think about it afterwards to make sure it was a good idea. Whereas with wisdom 8 or lower, you can just turn around and say it's a good idea. I don't need to think about it because I have wisdom 8 and I know it's a good idea.
It sounds good to me.
It's just yeah, it allows you to be a little more fallible and silly and have an excuse for it. And like a lot of players sort of behave that way anyway, but I like trying to stay true to my stats. So to allow me to do
I
that, I
think
have a low wisdom.
it's also good in terms of a GM's perspective because you wouldn't necessarily do what they expect you to do. So it does make not necessarily makes the GM's task harder, but it makes it more fun for them because you throw curveballs at them, I think, and that makes them think on their feet.
Exactly. And then I'll probably go. I'd go sorcerer. Let's talk about the class first because it's quite easy. I like casting spells and stuff, and it's one that I'm pretty familiar with. So if I had a go-to character, it would probably be a sorcerer. Although I want to do some interesting things with druids. Title of my sex tape. Yeah, but I do.
Yeah, you did tell me about your latest druid, and I think it's the first time you've played a druid, isn't it?
It is, and they're so good. I like previously in all other forms of D&D, druids have been a bit meh, and unbelievably, yeah, they're so good now. I keep finding new druid things that I'm like, and I can do this too. What? So yeah, my next character is probably going to be a druid, but it's not my go-to. A sorcerer would be my go-to. High charisma, so I'm friendly and can be a bit charming and persuasive. High intelligence, so I can actually
Cast spells.
well, no, it's charisma for sorcerers, but intelligence is like the ability to come up with ideas and stuff, and work your way through problems. And I would consider myself quite intelligent in real life, and it's frustrating for me to come up with an idea and then have to think actually my character wouldn't do that because they're not smart.
So it makes it challenging for you as well.
If I have a low intelligence, yes, and it's a challenge I don't enjoy, so I prefer having a higher intelligence. And then my physical stats are probably all dexterity and maybe a little bit of con. And then that allows me to be this kind of like chatty spellcaster, probably a bard as an occupation, but not a class. That goes around, casts spells, blows things up, does a bit of supporty stuff, and is still a little bit survivable. So that would be my go-to. Although, as I said, trying to change that. So if anyone GMs a D&D campaign for me in the future, don't expect a pyromancer sorcerer without much wisdom. It's probably going to be a cleric. Not a cleric, a druid, who does some very weird things, but it'll be fun. What about you? Give me a go-to character.
Yeah, my go-to character would be an elf rogue.
Okay.
I just like the whole stealthiness, like the assassin type archetype. Um, it just like, not excites me, but you know, it has the potential for a lot of fun episodes,
Mm.
mainly combat orientated, but you could throw it into an RPG. I think as an RPG element to it, as the role playing, I think playing an assassin is quite difficult, especially if you're with a party, because you're not really getting involved with parties per se. So you'd have to kind of make something up as to why you'd be there. So that would be my go-to.
Okay.
Going with an elf, you're not your dumpster. Your go-to stat is dexterity, really, as a rogue as well.
Mm-hmm.
You'd have a lot in depth, maybe a little bit in con, but you know your dumb stats again probably charisma for an assassin rogue type thing. But more recently, I've been playing a dwarf cleric, which I've been finding extremely fun. He's kind of been the tank, healer, combat specialist, a bit of everything.
Yeah, you had to fulfill.
Which is
Sorry, you had to fulfill quite a few roles in your party, didn't you?
yeah, which was not quite what I was used to doing. My damage dealing was abysmal at best, I think.
You got a couple of hits in on unimportant enemies. You crit one particular beastman to death, and then you thought that made the rest of your party think the beastmen were pushovers, which they were unfortunately not.
No, but I can't remember. Was that was with a spell though, wasn't it?
Oh, it might have been.
Yeah, I was going around with my hammer and not doing much.
Yeah,
if I remember correctly.
Gotta try.
With my one attack. And missing a lot of the times. Yeah, my rolls were hideous when I was trying to hit.
It was a bit of a relief for me, considering you had two people in the party who were like, "Oh, we've just got +10 to our attack," and I'm like, "Great." At least there's Thurvan and Bairn who can't hit a barn door if they were in the barn.
Standing next to it.
Yeah.
But going forwards, I think I'd like to dabble in the barbarian class, but not the norm. I think quite intrigued to play a gnome barbarian. Yeah, exactly. Something a little bit outrageous. And I can't imagine it being particularly good, but it'll be entertaining.
Yeah, it'll be fun. Why not? Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens after the Deathwatch campaign's over.
Yeah. I wonder if any of the others would be interested in GMing.
Chris might be. He wants to try GMing Peasant Quest for his family. And like Peasant Quest is just an absolute riot to GM. Because you just sit there saying, "Yeah, you could do that. Roll a dice. Oh, you might be dead. What a shame."
Yeah,
it's very stress free, which is how I designed it. But yeah, so maybe he'll try it. But I don't know how he'd feel about doing like a whole campaign.
Well, maybe just a one shot.
Yeah, maybe just a one shot. He might get into it after the one shot as well. We could trap him. Yeah.
In the clutch.
What would be your least favourite character to have to play?
I would say probably a wizard.
Okay, and why?
I don't know really. I envisage a lot more combat orientated. I think I've been spoiled with my combat orientated campaigns, so I find the wizards are quite weak as a character. But then you just where you put your stats, I suppose, really, isn't it?
Yeah,
you could have quite a constitutional wizard.
Yeah,
if you're fortunate enough to roll well. I don't know. I guess that's just what I feel. I've never really. I think Fervent's been one of the only wizards I've played with, and he's done really badly. So, uh,
That is, and I want to stress, in defense of the wizard class, because he was barely a wizard.
going from experience though, that's what I've got to draw from.
Okay,
It doesn't bode well for the wizard class.
fair enough.
What about you?
Well, before we move on to me, would
Yeah,
you say that you might be somewhat intimidated by having to look into all of the spells and things to find a good combination that will keep you alive while enable you to do damage as well?
Possibly. I mean, having played my generic elf rogue who hadn't had any spells going to the cleric, I did read a lot more into the spells and the spell list, and used them maybe not like properly efficiently, but efficiently to get as often as I could to keep the party alive. I don't think it's that much of a concern anymore, at least. Maybe when I was just singling out my rogue, then yeah, it would have been. But having that transition, I think, has helped.
Okay, interesting. Because the cleric has the advantage of being able to wear plate mail, which is a really considerable advantage. Whereas the wizard doesn't, and so they are quite fragile. They're very glass cannony unless you build and prepare right. So I just wondered if that might be a factor for you.
Yeah, mage armor is pretty strong.
It's all right. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not all it's cracked up to be. Let's put it that way.
It's not amazing, but it's better than
nothing.
Yeah, and it gives you some kind of durability.
Fair enough. All right then. Cool. Just thought I'd check.
But yourself, what would you say was your least?
Oh, it's difficult. This is going to sound contradictory. Contradictory.
It's not going to be a sorcerer with low wisdom, is it?
Well, they're the ones I'm least intrigued by playing because I've done them a lot. It's just my go-to class. That's what you asked for.
Yeah.
I think the one I'm least enthralled with is Bard. Because my past experience has always been that they've been inefficient, not very good, difficult to make relevant, underpowered, and that's based on previous editions. I've not played in the most recent one, and the only bard I've seen is someone who wasn't as experienced with D&D as you might need to be to get good use out of a bard, as opposed to like a fighter or a wizard where it's like this axe or this spell does tons of damage.
Yeah, to be fair, it does seem like one of those classes which is designed for new players.
It feels more
it's definitely designed for someone who's got a little bit more experience.
Yeah, so it feels like an occupation that another character might have, like something they did in their free time, than a class. But I do want to try one. I just will likely get them killed in session 2 when I stop enjoying it, or decide that I don't want to enjoy it. But they can do some cool things, like they can cast Vicious Mockery as a bonus action. It's extra damage at range. They can heal people. They're like this weird sort of pseudo support class. So I'm going to try running them instead of running a cleric.
Yeah, they are very much the support, and I think providing you've got someone who can take the hits, it's a lot easier. But if you end up having a party full of support characters, you're going to struggle quite a bit.
Yeah, but bards can also flex into, if the party comp needs it, can also flex into being in the same way that rogues can, like pseudo frontline melee fighters, where they've got like high dex, decent enough armor, and a couple of tricks that get them out of trouble. there might be things they can do, but yeah, I've just never seen a bard that has actually made me think, you know what, bards are good.
I think it'd just be one of those things where you're scrolling through the rule book and you come across something and you go, "Ooh, I want to try that,"
Yeah, I might go and have a
and
look
see
at
how
them
it works.
after recording. The other one though would be rogue because I think they'd just be quite boring. But that's because I always view them as very highly competent. Um, if I made a rogue, it would be someone with like loads of dex, a fair amount of intelligence and wisdom, and decent enough tricks to get them out of combat. I'd probably focus on like ranged attacks and things, and
Mm,
sneak attack is really good.
strong.
I mean, I did make a rogue that was quite fun. He was a bugbear assassin, assassin being the archetype. Like the amount of like it was my most min-maxed character, I think. Um, and I just took all of these out of combat bonuses, and Dunk was the GM, and he was like, "Yeah, you can do that." And then when we saw it happening, it was like, "Oh, this is not okay." Um, but I enjoyed it. But like, I kind of got to the peak of that build very quickly. There wasn't anywhere to go from there.
Mm,
I was just going to get
nothing to
more.
branch into.
Yeah, I was just going to get more sneak attack. I was just going to get more damage. I was just going to kill more people or threaten their families if they made me pay for things. Um, yeah. So I think I'd be more willing to play a bard than I would a rogue. So I'll change my answer. It'll be a rogue.
Okay, okay, that's interesting. Well, yeah, sort of the one I'm more interested, or my go to is your least favorite.
I get the appeal of
Then we're
it.
all different. Hmm.
I just it doesn't appeal to me. So there's
So
yeah.
moving back on to character creation, then. I
Mm,
mean, when we did ours, we did the roll stats for it, and
yeah.
there's different sort of rolling rules, isn't there?
So
This is
there's
how Servant got so bad so quickly. I think.
well, he actually used the proper rolling system. Chris just can't roll dice. It appears. Um, so the rolling system we used is the one highlighted in the book, where you roll for each stat. You roll four six-sided gaming dice, like d6, and you take the three highest, and that's your stat. And then you can assign them to whichever stat you want to build your character. The variant of that is you just roll them down in order, and those are your stats, and you have to choose your class based on that. I don't like that so much because it kind of pigeonholes people based on chance, and I don't like the idea that characters are going to be like, well, I rolled a high intelligence and a low strength, so I'm probably going to be stuck being a wizard for this entire campaign. Um, I'd rather people got to choose what they wanted so they had fun.
I'm sure Chris did something different. I'm sure it was he rolled less dice, or
The one he wanted to do was the hardcore system that I know from second edition, where you just roll three dice and that's your lot. So
yeah. And I think he did that.
I don't.
I think that's how he ended up with such poor
I think he wanted to.
everything.
I can't remember now. Maybe he did. But yeah, it's a braver way, and it makes for a tougher campaign. But it emphasizes the focus on like character flaws quite a lot. So you have to play round
Mm,
your dump stats rather than just being like, oh, my dump stat is my 12 in Constitution. It's
mm,
like, well, that's not bad, is it? Let's be honest. Um, yeah. So the other one is the point buy system, where you start at 10 in all the stats, and then you can bump your stats up by buying to a certain number of points. There's a few calculators online for it. It's quite good if you want to tailor make your character to make sure you're not bad at anything, um, and it still allows you
yeah.
to mold your character as you will.
It it does sound a lot more of a cop out in the sense that there's no randomness to it, and like you said, it's tailor making it, so you make it how you want. And I think the fun part of D&D is the dice rolling. Really, it's the chance that you could have something really bad.
Yeah, I enjoy that certainly. I can understand that other people might not though.
Hmm.
The point buy system is good for people who worry. It's good if you're starting a party with people who don't know each other too well, because it means everybody's at a balanced level. It's harder for people to stand out. Like if I roll 18s for everything because my dice are on fire during character creation, then like I'm basically two characters.
Yeah.
And whereas with the point buy, everybody's at the similar kind of level. So either you're quite generally good, or you go, actually, I want to be really good at one thing, but I'm pretty bad at two others. The last one method of stat choosing is there's like a beginner stat block. So you're given like a 16, a 15, a 14, a 13, an 11, and an 8, I think, in the rule book. It's written down there. You basically get 6 stats. They're quite good, with one being average and one being subpar, and then you assign them as you will. And that's really good for newer players, I think.
Yeah. You can tailor it then to your character, but I still prefer the rolling.
Indeed.
The 4d6, picking the 3 highest, I think, is the much more fun version, sort of your fluffy version.
Yeah. The problem there is though, like someone could end up quite feasibly with a character who's just got a lot of 12s. And I'd let them reroll that, or I'd let them like deduct down and go up, or similar to the point buy system. I guess that's how I would.
Yeah, I think it's down to the GM, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
In that respect, and it's this is probably where one of the biggest parts for the GM is to try and get their character, their party, sort of ready and prepared for what's to come. I think having a little bit of guidance from the GM is quite helpful.
Yeah.
In this because you quite like you said, you could have 3 characters who are really strong, and then you got one who's just really not. Brave Sir Robin. Picking if that player's happy to stay with those stats, but as a GM, I think you'd be wanting to say, you know what, you can re-roll some of those if you want to, or you can take all 4 dice just to make it a little bit better if you do really that badly.
Yeah, it's about GM discretion, and I know because the issue here comes from the rule book being the rule book, and some GMs are very much like, no, that's what you rolled, you've got to play. And if I'd rolled all 12s for my character, I'd be like, well, this is going to be a really bad campaign. So either you let me re-roll it, or I'm going to get my character killed in a pub fight in the first session, and you let me re-roll it into a new character. And I'd much rather they just said, actually, you can re-roll it, than I had to waste the party's time for like a half hour being like, no, don't heal me, I can do it, I can take it. And then getting my character killed at level 1 pointlessly.
Indeed. I think, you kind of have to be, if you're going into a setting with unknowns, and you say, well, you know what, as a player, saying, no, I don't like these stats, I'm going to kill off my character, and I think it'd be quite harsh for the GM to say, actually, no, it's not happening. It kind of kills the fun of it, I think.
Yeah, and I want to stress here for the GMs listening, saying, oh, you're just being salty because you roll bad stats. No, I said earlier I love bad stats. What I don't like is not having something I'm good at, or that I can be good at.
Or bad at, equally.
Yeah, well, I mean, if I rolled all 8s for everything, what's the point of me playing? But there are rules in the book that say you can re-roll it if you get that bad. But if you get distinctly average and just roll 12 for everything, you don't fall into that category of being able to re-roll it, and you're still going to have an uninspired campaign session. I'd much rather drop 2 of them to 10, 1 of them to 9, and bump up one of my other stats to 18. And then I'm like, I'm good at one thing, mediocre at 2, passable at 2 others, and bad at this. And then it's got it's much more like a character there, because no one comes out of the world like factory made, distinctly average at everything. So I think like some leniency is required. Again, though, those GMs out there
Yeah,
might be listening and still call me salty because I don't like the rules. But the point behind being the GM is that you can bend the rules all the time, and if you don't, then
yeah,
your characters are probably going to have a pretty rotten campaign at some point.
yeah. I'd say so. So
Yeah.
moving on from that, then the with the stats, etc. Things like starting money is an interesting one.
Oh, yeah. I suppose. That's a very GM response, where starting money is utterly unimportant because after your first session, you'll all be infinitely, well, not infinitely, but by like 5 or 6 times richer.
Mm,
I like the new system whereby you get a set number of equipment, because it used to be that you just got starting gold and then you had to buy your equipment out of it, which was unnecessarily
yeah,
complicated.
yeah. I mean that's still fifth edition though. Having that ability, you can still do that.
Well, you can,
I think.
yeah, you can, I suppose, if you want the classic experience, but it adds like an extra level that doesn't really add anything. I feel
Mm,
like having to arm yourself, unless you're literally starting as farmers. But then, like, why?
peasants.
Yeah, peasants. But then, why are you suddenly a cleric? Like, you know. So, I always feel that the characters are already better than your average person and more important than your average person, slightly, even if they're level 1.
Mm.
So,
Yeah, I mean they're going to have some kind of experience in fighting
yeah,
ability
exactly.
with whatever weapon that they're using.
So the
So they
equipment.
are
Sorry, you carry on.
so they are just better than your average peasant.
Yeah, exactly. Um, but I can understand people like to have some spending money. So there's like you roll a d6 and you times it by 10 or whatever it is for your class.
Mm.
And you've got a little bit of money to splash around or lose, just so you can literally. I think it's just so all of your people can go to the tavern and spend money on some beer and stuff.
And somewhere to stay and a
Yeah,
horse.
exactly.
Timothy,
Some
Timothy the horse.
very basic stuff in that respect. Um, so yeah, that's for starting money. I mean, what I think I'd like to talk about a bit is party composition.
Hmm.
Yeah. So this is something that I like to not pay attention to much when I design my characters. But what I do think is important, especially for newer parties, is to talk about what you want to play before you build your character and say, I'm doing this.
Mm.
Because, like, if you all go, oh, I'm going to be the wizard, I'm going to do tons of damage, and you have this party of, like, 4 wizards, and the campaign's, like, not ready for you to deal with that. At level 1, you're going to blow away those 6 goblins that attack you, but then the next encounter involving an ogre, and you're not ready for it, because you didn't rest, because you thought, oh, we'll be fine getting back to town. Then like 2 of you die. So it requires a little more planning. So either you need to talk to your party during character creation to see what they want to play and make sure you've got at least 1 healer, ideally, and at least 1 person who can take hits.
Yeah, I think that sort of the generic go-to party is generally you've got a tank, you've got a healer, and you've got some sort of damage dealers support.
Yeah,
Because you're going to have either a fighter, a cleric, or a barbarian as one of the characters. A bard or a cleric for your healer. You're going to have a wizard. It could be a sorcerer, it could be a warlock or someone like that. Or then you're going to have like a rogue or a ranger or a druid.
yeah, and
That's
like
generally your party, your four-person party.
yeah, there's like, and normally parties fall into most of that, at least in a way that means they can function. So,
Mm.
I mean, I think it's just a good idea for players to talk about what they want to play beforehand, and so that even if they do all end up playing like we're all going to be rogues, then they know that everybody's going to be a rogue, and you can come up with like plans of how you're going to do that. Because your party's behaviour is something that people aren't always aware of, except in the sense that, like, people are murder hobos. They don't live anywhere and they're paid to go and kill people. Um, yeah, so, like, but your party's behaviour depends on its composition. So as long as you know how your party's going to operate, that's fine. But if you've got 4 rogues who, and I'm just using rogues as an example because they're quite an extreme class, 4 rogues who are all archers, like, they're not going to get their sneak attack damage off unless one of them's in a really bad place and being beaten up. And if they are in a bad place being beaten up, or all of them have to fight a 1-on-1, then they're suddenly going to be like, I can't get my extra damage out. I've got a short sword. It's not very good. So you have to, like, work out what your party tactics are.
Do you remember playing the Knights of Verona campaign? The Eddie's one.
Yeah, bits of it. It was a long time ago.
It was quite some time ago. And then it sort of made me think of that one because although we weren't all knights, it kind of felt like we were all going to be sort of your fighters, but it didn't really come across that way. So that's, again, it comes down to the sort of GM's discretion and guidance.
Yeah.
As well, because you could just say, yeah, like, we all want to be this, but it might be the part of the campaign is that actually that's not going to fit in.
Yeah.
So you can't be a spellcaster because there's no such thing as magic in this setting, for instance.
Yeah, which would be sad.
It's a very extreme D&D session if that's the case.
We did one like that. American John ran it. It was still quite good. But we were forewarned that spellcasters would have it tough. I think, again, it comes down to, like, the GM making people aware early on, and then the party having to actively take a role in, or at least having, like, a contribution to what they want to do. Yeah.
Agreed.
Indeed. So, we're approaching at a rate of 1 second per second. The time limit for this episode. What we've talked about, just in recap, is ourselves a little bit. And then we talked about D&D and the classes and stuff. Didn't really talk about GMing it, but GMing is a different kind of monster.
It does require its own episode, I think, more than anything.
My last point. Oh, carry on.
Oh no, go.
Well, my last point on D&D is that it's still very geared towards combat. I find, like, a lot of the things are like, this does this in combat, etc. And can be the threat of dick measuring and being like, oh, I'm a barbarian, I do this much damage, yada yada. Or I'm a rogue and I can do more damage than you can, I can take you in a fight. And I think it's very important to remember that you're a party of cooperative people, even if you aren't friends necessarily. So just try to get on with the characters.
Yeah, it does come down to being a sportsman. You know, you're there to play a game with others. You know, it's kind of like almost like a team building exercise, I suppose you could put it in that bracket.
Yeah.
You're there to work as a team. You're there to have fun. And if someone's going, oh, I'm this, I'm that, I'm the other, and you know, not everyone's going to have fun. So treat it as such, and you will have fun.
Yeah, indeed, and it is a lot of fun. Like, I think D&D 5th is a really good role play system. I can't think of many ways. Well, just like the combat focus is a little awkward, but it's come leaps and bounds as far as role playing goes and advising people on how to role play, so that the tools are there to help people who are less good. And then if you're pretty good at it already, you can just use the bare bones to make whatever you want.
Yeah, absolutely.
Indeed. Although there will always be someone in the pie who tries to hit on various people. You know, when they walk in the bar, session 1, be like, I want to. Are there any attractive men, women, tentacle beasts? Insert target here as appropriate. And there's always that person. Fortunately for you guys, it was Thurvan. Or actually, maybe it was Cara. She liked a man in uniform.
Yeah. Yes, she did.
Yeah.
She hit it off with the captain, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so she flirted with one of the captains in the Watch in the first city as well, when Will accidentally became the paramour of the leader of the Watch.
Yeah.
And then she looked around for someone of a prestigious enough rank, I think, for her to bother with. Was the feeling I got. But, you know, kudos to her. That's fine. But yeah, so
although her being new to D&D in some respects, I think it's probably something that she was going to try eventually anyway.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's definitely something you can do, and to a certain extent, it's entirely believable that an adventurer who's been on the road for a while might look for that sort of thing. But there's a bit of stereotype, isn't it? What's the first thing you want to do as a role player? I'm going to sleep with something attractive, or it's going to sleep with me. Yeah. Maybe if I play that character again, it will be a kobold, and it's just set on charming one member of every species into bed.
Possibly, although you kind of did that with your dwarf, didn't you?
Sort of. He was a very lecherous pervert. He had quite a traumatic tragedy of a journey. He had his one true love died after they got married to save them both from worse marriages that were prearranged by their parents. It's quite a romantic tale, really.
Quite,
yeah. There were some not so romantic sections. I'm sure Gigi, the lady who played the tiefling bard, that was his paramour in inverted commas, has a list of things that was wrong with Ivan Stormbeard.
Although it took her a while to find them.
Oh no, they were immediately obvious, but eventually he endeared himself to tiefling. It took a while, took a long time. I think we were level 8 by the time she was accepting the fact that they were in fact married, and that was actually a good thing.
She didn't have a choice at that moment in time.
Well, she did. She was given the choice. I made sure as well to speak, and this was really important. I feel that I spoke to Gigi outside of sessions and was like, "Look, hi, we've just met, and my dwarf is hitting you in your teeth thing. It's really awkward because it's uncomfortable. I hope you're cool with it, and if you're not, I'll stop." And she said she'd let me know if she wasn't cool with it. And I checked another couple of times, and no, she was pretty okay with it, because it was all in the game. Like, if it had been me in real life trying to hit on her through the medium of D&D, that would have been weird, but it definitely wasn't. She just happened to be a charisma 20 tiefling that wore some very tight leather clothes. And my dwarven wizard with charisma 8 made that his target. So the romance of the ages. Anyway,
indeed.
On that happy note, we're coming into the final minute of our podcast. So we didn't have any questions apart from when the next one was going to be out, so I didn't leave time for that. I've had fun.
I've had fun.
Brilliant, and we hope you've had fun, or will have fun, or do have fun.
When listening to this, having listened to it already.
Indeed.
By this point in time.
Enjoy the artwork.
And if you skip to the end, then shame on you.
Yeah. No excuses. Like, everyone's an amateur. So that is everything from us. Until next time, when we'll talk about a different system, possibly Savage Worlds.
Ooh, bit spicy there.
Yeah. But for now, it's goodbye from him.
And it's goodbye from me.
And We will see you next time for another hour of adventure.
Ciao for now. Did you get the beeps in the recording?
Yes, I think I did. But it's fine. You know, humans find it hilarious. It's okay.
Humans find it hilarious.
Yeah, why not?
I like it.
Right, well, yeah, I'm just going to show you my artwork that I'm using for this session as well. Let me...
All right.
I've just got the maps from last night up there. Pretty good, considering they're all done in paint at a very... So here it is. This is the artwork.
Are you sending it in the messenger?
Yeah, it's in Discord. Is it not beautiful?
How long did that take you?
About 100 seconds. Oh, Picasso couldn't have done better with MS Paint. Don't give me that.
It's true. Have I got a bucket on my head?
Yes, because yes.